So the Sixers got boat raced last night by the Boston Celtics in a game where Boston shot 55% from three. It was ugly, especially after James Harden rang the bell at the Wells Fargo Center. But who cares about that game? Because the beard is here. So if you're pumped up for James Harden to make his debut in that Sixers uniform, hit that thumbs up icon, like the video, and let's start today's show. Welcome in to Philadelphia 76ers Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Chase Senior. On today's show, we're talking about James Harden and the potential possibility that Philadelphia signs a player like Denis Schroder if he becomes an NBA buyout candidate. But there's some weird stuff going on with this James Harden contract and him opting in for next year. When that trade was made official on NBA trade deadline day, the expectation and the initial reporting was that James Harden opted in to that one-year contract for 2022-2023. But according to Shams Charania, that's not the case. So now we're looking at a potential possibility where James Harden can opt out of that deal and become an NBA free agent this upcoming summer. Let's run you through everything going down with Harden and Philadelphia. This coming from Shams, as I talked about. The paperwork was filed, but they did not meet the buzzer for the opt-in. So Harden still has the option to opt in the summer, but there was a time period where he could have opted in conjunction with the trade. They ended up not filing the paperwork in time, so a little bit of procedural situation with the paperwork now could allow James Harden to become an NBA free agent. Now, a couple of things to kind of monitor here. I don't think Daryl Morey would have made this trade, sending away Ben Simmons, Andre Drummond, Seth Curry, and those 2 first-round picks if he knew that there was an expectation or a belief that Harden could only play the last, let's say, 20 games of this year and then go into free agency. You mortgage all of that knowing that James Harden is going to opt in for either next year or maybe even more years on top of that. So I think that's what's going to happen with this James Harden contract. Now, because he didn't meet that deadline, he also has some weird stuff going on with his agency. He used to be represented by Rob Pelinka, is not any longer. But was Harden too busy celebrating at Delilah's after he got what he wanted and getting traded away from the Brooklyn Nets to the Philadelphia 76ers? Because as he said during that introductory press conference, he saw Philadelphia as the perfect fit. He has his jersey retired at a strip club in Houston. Maybe he was just going in at Delilah's. Who the hell knows? But I'm glad if he was celebrating, he was giving some money to the city of Philadelphia. Now, should we be concerned, about James Harden maybe entering free agency? Maybe a little bit, but Shams Charania said he believes the, quote, intent is for him to opt in during the offseason, which Harden confirmed during his Tuesday press conference when he was asked about that by John Clark of NBC Sports Philadelphia. He could opt in to the $47.4 million contract for next year and sign an additional 4-year, $223 max contract extension during the summer. So those are really just the catching up points about this James Harden scenario. There's no way that Daryl Morey would let James Harden walk following this trade. He gave up way too much, and he sees Harden as his son, but also a key figure for this organization and an opportunity to really maximize the prime years of Joel Embiid. And inside-outside offensively, this has the potential to be one of the best inside-outside offensive pairings that we've seen in the history of the NBA, especially right now. Now, I want to ask you this, Philadelphia, because here at Chat Sports, this isn't all we do here on Philadelphia 76ers Now. I cover the NBA, the Sixers, as well as the NFL. We also do watch parties for a lot of NBA games, mostly in the playoffs, but for every one of our NFL games. So when James Harden does make his debut at Philadelphia, after the All-Star break, as he continues to rehabilitate that hamstring injury and not going to partake in All-Star festivities, should we do a watch party for Harden's debut in a Sixers uniform where we do some play-by-play, drink some beers, and interact with the audience? If you want us to do a watch party for Harden's debut in a Sixers uniform, get into the comment section right now and let me know. I want to know how many people would tune in and support what we do. Type "need it" if you want us to do a lit watch party for Harden's debut. And make sure you subscribe to the channel while you're at it by hitting that red subscribe button down below. Let me ask you this, Philadelphia. Do you want entertaining, edgy, informative, consistent Sixers news and rumors coverage? We have you covered right here on the channel. Over the weekend, we were able to surpass 4,000 subscribers as the fastest growing Sixers channel on YouTube. Join the family by hitting that red subscribe button down below. Sixers do have some roster needs following that trade, and they could look to make additions to the roster on the NBA buyout market. I've been asked this question, and I'm pairing that up with the fact that there were reports going into the NBA trade deadline that the Sixers had some interest in Denis Schroder, who was traded away from the Boston Celtics to the Houston Rockets in exchange for Daniel Tice. Should the Sixers pursue him if he is indeed bought out by the Houston Rockets, furthermore making him an NBA free agent? I don't really like the idea of Denis Schroder coming to Philadelphia because, frankly, at this point, I don't think the Sixers need him. Now, if they didn't make a move for James Harden, there was a roster need for another playmaking option who could handle the basketball. You don't have that any longer because James Harden is playing for Philly. As for what Schroder was able to do with the Boston Celtics after signing that one-year, $5.9 million contract, he was pretty good after turning down that 4-year, $84 million deal last year with the Los Angeles Lakers. All-time bad business move. 14.5 points per game with Boston. Little more than 4 dimes, little less than 4 rebounds, but he's never been a big rebounder at the guard spot. You ask him to play, make, and create for himself and others, and he shot around 44% from the floor and sub 40% from distance. Denis Schroder is really good as a 6-man type, a guy who can come in as a backup point guard, can play on ball, off ball, and give you a playmaking option. And in one game with the Houston Rockets since getting traded, he only got 18 minutes. That's why I think he could be bought out by the Houston Rockets, and for him, it'd probably work out better because he could hop on board a playoff contending team. And the fact that he only got that amount of playing time tells me that maybe he's going to get bought out. I just don't see it as an option for the Philadelphia 76ers. You have Tyrese Maxey. Shake Milton is now back coming off that injury, and you have James Harden. Furkan Korkmaz can run a little bit of point, although I really do prefer him play off ball as a quick release shooter. By the way, his 3-point percentage this year, awful. So I think if you make him more comfortable playing around the wing, that could bring the best out of Furkan Korkmaz. And because you do have those 3 ball handlers, a fourth with Furkan Korkmaz in a spell, in a pinch when you need him to handle those duties, I don't think you have to really pursue a player like Denis Schroder. And frankly, for me, he's a little bit too spotty for me offensively. So I do want to ask you this because he could be bought out. He could be an option for Philadelphia. And when he is hot, when he goes on a heater, he's a pretty good offensive player. What is your level of interest in Denis Schroder? Scale it for me from 1 to 100 here at Chat Sports. We're all about the audience interaction, so get that comment section popping. And speaking of Chat Sports, our main Chat Sports YouTube channel, about 300 people away from 280,000 subscribers. And on our main Chat Sports YouTube channel, we continue to push out NBA news, NBA rumors, NBA mock draft content. We also go live on our main Chat Sports YouTube channel. We're going to continue to ramp up those efforts as we progress here in the NBA season, now that the NFL season is kind of dying down a little bit going into NFL free agency. So go to youtube.com/chatsportstv and subscribe to our main Chat Sports YouTube channel and just help us continue to grow here at Chat Sports as we continue to kill the game. And thanks, as always, for making Philadelphia 76ers now a part of your day.